You upload a piece of work you poured your soul into. It could be a presentation at work, a piece of art, or a video you spent weeks editing. Hundreds of people see it. Dozens of people tell you it is brilliant. They send you messages saying how much it helped them, how deeply it resonated, and how much they appreciate your effort. You feel a warm, radiating glow of accomplishment. But then you scroll down to the bottom of the page and see it. One single sentence from a complete stranger or a passing colleague. This is incredibly unoriginal and honestly a bit rushed. Instantly, the warm glow vanishes. Your heart rate spikes. Your stomach drops. You spend the next 6 hours pacing around your house, mentally fighting a phantom. You completely forget the 50 people who praised you. You let one passing string of text completely decimate your entire day. Before we dive in, remember this video is for educational purposes only. Welcome to the channel, where we explore the hidden psychology behind our everyday behaviors. We assume this intense reaction is just human nature. We think everyone reacts this way, but think of your mind like a highly sensitive sonar system on a deep-sea submarine. Its primary function is to scan the dark waters, detect massive, incoming torpedoes, and trigger evasive maneuvers. When a gentle, beautiful school of fish swims by, the sonar barely registers it, dismissing it as safe and unremarkable. But if a single jagged piece of metal floats into its radar, the entire submarine erupts into blaring red alarms. The system is not designed to appreciate the breathtaking beauty of the ocean. It is designed entirely to keep you from sinking. Your brain operates with the exact same skewed acoustic calibration. It is biologically wired to amplify the negative because historically, the negative was what killed us. Repeated behaviors and thought patterns can deeply influence our emotional responses. This does not mean your personality is fixed. The goal here is to explain how gradual influence works, so you can begin to teach your brain something else. You find yourself rereading that negative comment 20 times in a row. You screenshot it. You send it to a friend. You dissect the grammar, the tone, and the possible intentions of the person who wrote it. You spend more time analyzing this one sentence than you spent enjoying the dozens of compliments you received. We usually tell ourselves that we are just analyzing the feedback to improve. We convince our logical brain that we are merely seeking constructive criticism to be better next time, framing our obsession as a noble pursuit of excellence. In reality, you are caught in the suffocating grip of the negativity bias. Our brains require significantly more cognitive processing power to handle negative information. Positive feedback is processed quickly and discarded because it requires no immediate survival action. Negative feedback, however, acts as a cognitive sticky trap. Your amygdala flags it as an active, burning threat to your social standing. The brain treats a harsh word on the internet with the same physiological alarm as a predator in the wild. The cost of this mental sticky trap is that your emotional state becomes entirely dependent on an impossible standard. You demand a 0% failure rate from the universe. If you focus solely on the one critique, you systematically train your brain to ignore the overwhelming evidence of your own competence. What does this habit give you today? And what might it cost you tomorrow? Maybe you are not simply trying to improve. Maybe you have trained yourself to use constructive criticism as a respectable excuse to obsess over feeling inadequate. What have you been practicing without realizing it? And if you practiced reading a negative comment only once and deleting it for the next year, what might become easier? The comment hits a very specific, highly sensitive nerve. Maybe it calls you inexperienced or suggests your work is lazy. The reason it ruins your day isn't just because it is mean. It is because it echoes a fear you already secretly hold about yourself in the quietest corners of your mind. It feels like this stranger has uniquely pierced through your disguise. You assume they are the only person brave enough to tell you the harsh, unfiltered truth, while everyone else who praised you was just being polite, fake, or blindly supportive. This is the devastating power of cognitive resonance and confirmation bias. When external criticism aligns with our internal self-doubt, the brain latches onto it as undeniable proof. If you secretly feel like an imposter, a negative comment doesn't feel like a subjective opinion. It feels like an objective verdict. Your brain ignores the 99 praises because they conflict with your internal belief of inadequacy. But it welcomes the insult because it confirms your worst suspicions about yourself. Letting this echo chamber dictate your worth means you are constantly outsourcing your self-esteem to your harshest critics. You are effectively paying a massive emotional tax. You could easily lose 50,000 USD in missed career opportunities simply because you convince yourself that the one critic was right and you should stop putting your work out there. The habit of believing the worst about yourself probably kept you safe from disappointment in the past. But what does this habit give you today, and what might it cost you tomorrow? Maybe you don't actually lack talent. Maybe you have practiced confirming your own insecurities so intensely that you actively seek out people who agree with your inner critic. You are in the shower or driving to the grocery store, and you are having a full-blown, intense imaginary argument with the person who left the comment. You are inventing brilliant, devastating comebacks. You are dismantling their logic piece by piece. Your heart is racing as if they are sitting right in the passenger seat. It feels like you are defending your honor. You desperately believe that if you can just formulate the absolute perfect mental rebuttal, you will regain your peace of mind, prove your worth, and finally close the psychological loop. But you are actually engaging in the destructive cycle of rumination. This is the compulsive, uncontrollable replaying of a distressing event. Rumination tricks the brain into thinking it is actively solving a problem, but it is actually just deepening the emotional wound. Every time you replay the insult, your brain releases the exact same stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, as when you first read it. You are literally re-traumatizing your own nervous system over and over again. The tragedy of rumination is that the person who left the comment forgot about you 3 seconds after they typed it. They went on with their day, but you are allowing them to live rent-free in your mind, burning your precious cognitive energy. You are giving a passing stranger ultimate jurisdiction over your inner peace. What does this habit give you today? And what might it cost you tomorrow? Maybe you aren't fighting for your honor. Maybe you have practiced arguing with ghosts so much that you forgot how to enjoy the silence. What have you been practicing without realizing it? And if you practiced physically interrupting your imaginary arguments for the next year, what might become easier? Notice what is happening here. None of these reactions are about the actual comment itself. The comment is just a tiny string of pixels on a glowing screen. The real pain comes from what you are doing with those pixels in your own head. The things that shape us are not always massive, traumatic events. Sometimes they are the quiet, invisible ways we process everyday friction. By this point, you might be noticing something deeply uncomfortable. Letting a bad comment ruin your day doesn't feel like a conscious decision anymore. It feels like a reflex. It feels like who you are. That is the strange thing about repetition. At first, you react to the stimulus. Eventually, the reaction becomes an automated sequence. But an automated sequence can be rewritten. A habit can influence your personality without defining your core identity. Recognizing this pattern is not a reason to shame yourself. It is a reason to finally become more conscious of it. Someone tries to comfort you by reminding you of all the amazing, glowing feedback you received. You immediately brush them off, roll your eyes, and change the subject. You say, "Yeah, but those people are just my friends or they are just being nice. They don't really understand the industry standards. We disguise this rejection of praise as humility or grounded realism. We think we are just being objective, maintaining high standards, and refusing to let our egos get artificially inflated by cheap compliments. Psychologists call this cognitive filtering, specifically the disqualification of the positive. Your brain acts like a ruthless, heavily armed bouncer at an exclusive nightclub, actively rejecting any evidence of your success while rolling out the red carpet for any evidence of your failure. You create arbitrary, moving goalposts and irrational rules that systematically invalidate every piece of praise you receive. If you constantly filter out the good, you will eventually starve your own motivation. You will create a bleak mental environment where success is impossible because the rules of the game are permanently rigged against you. The habit of rejecting praise likely kept you humble when you were first starting out. But what does this habit give you today? And what might it cost you tomorrow? Maybe you are not naturally modest. Maybe you have practiced disqualifying your own wins to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of actually accepting love. What have you been practicing without realizing it? And if you practiced taking a compliment without a single counterargument for the next year, what might become easier? You seriously contemplate deleting your project, taking down your art, or never speaking up in a boardroom meeting again. You decide to drastically shrink your own life and visibility to guarantee you never have to read another negative remark. It seems entirely logical to protect yourself. Why touch the hot stove again? You convince yourself that staying small, quiet, and invisible is the absolute only way to maintain your emotional safety and peace of mind. This touches the absolute core of our evolutionary psychology. Thousands of years ago, being criticized or rejected by the tribe meant literal death. We are biologically wired to fear social ostracization because isolation meant starvation and exposure to predators. Even though a negative comment today cannot physically harm you, your primal brain intensely interprets social disapproval as a severe threat to your actual survival. When you shrink your life to avoid criticism, you are allowing the ancient fear of exile to dictate your modern potential. You stop taking risks. You stop creating beautiful things. You stop living fully. You forfeit the beautiful, messy process of growth just to avoid the temporary discomfort of being judged by strangers. What does this habit give you today? And what might it cost you tomorrow? Maybe you are not naturally timid. Maybe you have practiced hiding yourself so well that your brain believes visibility is a death sentence. What have you been practicing without realizing it? And if you practiced keeping your work online despite the criticism for the next year, what might become easier? But there is a deeper truth underneath all of this. We have been conditioned to believe that our emotional state must perfectly mirror our external environment. We mistakenly assume that if someone is angry with us, we must feel anxious. We believe that a bad comment mandates a bad day. We have normalized giving our emotional remote control to anyone with an internet connection. But refusing to let a stranger dictate your mood is not arrogance. It is emotional sovereignty. Understanding the difference between the events that happen to you and the narrative you build around them is the key to untangling your identity from external validation. Changing your response does not mean you become a cold, unfeeling robot who ignores all feedback and refuses to grow. It simply means giving yourself more choices. A steering wheel doesn't decide where a car must go. It simply gives the driver the ability to change direction when the road curves. Awareness works in a similar way. Realizing that you have been practicing the habit of letting negativity consume you does not instantly teleport you to a place of impenetrable confidence, but it gives you agency. It gives you the steering wheel back. Why does any of this matter? Because the small choices you make every single day are quietly building the architecture of your future mind. One day doesn't define you. One bad comment doesn't define you. One moment of rumination doesn't define you. One bad habit doesn't define you. But what you repeatedly return to deserves your absolute attention. The quiet ways you obsess over criticism, the subtle ways you discard praise, the invisible ways you shrink your life to avoid judgment. These are not insignificant simply because they are small. They are repeated, and repetition accumulates into a life. What are you practicing becoming? When you look at the life you have built and the immense power you have quietly handed over to strangers, are you practicing emotional fragility or are you practicing resilience? You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to remain completely unbothered. Because perhaps the person you become isn't decided in one dramatic, flawless moment of finally being universally loved. Perhaps they are being shaped quietly, gently, and inevitably in the things you do again tomorrow.